wake up on a daily basis and count this money up, I'm already rich. I go so hard with these riches. I fell in love with this dolly. I fell in love with the rolling. I wake up, pray every morning. These demons, they calling my son. I say fuck all of you hoes. I'm ballin' out of control. I'm ballin' out of control. If I can give everything back to you, all this passion I got, all I ever need.
There isn't much difference between the ideology of American politicians and Nazis. To prove this point, I'll be reading quotes from American politicians and Nazis and see if you can differentiate between the two. If you can't, then that is proof that America is in fact fascist, and fascists love to wrap themselves in a uniform or a flag that is supposed to absolve them of any criticism. You know, they claim they're doing it for service of their country or to defend democracy or protect and preserve Christian ways, but you know, all the BS excuses about why we need to hand the state more power and why they should get to decide what's taught in schools or who's allowed across the border, and there are literally Nazis in America's political institutions. They claim that the anti-fascists and communists and socialists who point out that America embraces fascism were being alarmist or exaggerating or using hyperbole. You know, just as the scientists who pointed out climate change were labeled as alarmists until it's too late. I'll be reading a collection of quotes from Nazis and American politicians and see if you can differentiate between the two. They put the Jewish interest above blank's interest. It's about goddamn time that the Jew in blank realizes he's a blank first and a Jew second. The greatest achievements in intellectual life can never be produced by those of alien race, but only by those who are inspired by the blank or blank spirit. In the matter of the Chinese and Japanese immigration, I stand for the national policy of exclusion. We cannot make a homogeneous population out of people who do not want to blend in with a Caucasian race. Orientalism will give us another race problem to solve, and surely we have had our lesson. Blacks can't run it, nowhere, and they won't be able to for 100 years, and may not for 1,000. Do you know maybe one black country that's run well? Segregation is not humiliation, but a benefit, and ought to be so regarded by you gentlemen. And if they put Jews into gas chambers in the Soviet Union, it is not a blank concern, maybe a humanitarian concern. The blank lies in wait for hours on end, satanically glaring at and spying on the unsuspicious girl whom he plans to seduce, adulterating her blood and removing her from the bosom of her own people. The blank uses every possible means to undermine the racial foundations of a subjugated people. The Jews are a very aggressive and abrasive and obnoxious personality. They are coming along, and that after all, they are going to strengthen our country in the end because they are strong physically, and some of them are smart. The institution of slavery that the black race has long believed to be an abomination upon its people may actually have been a blessing in disguise. The blacks who could endure those conditions and circumstances would someday be rewarded with citizenship in the greatest nation ever established upon the face of the earth. Hence today I believe I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. By defending myself against the Jew, I am fighting for the work of the Lord. To see those monkeys from those African countries, damn them, they're still uncomfortable wearing shoes. The Reconstruction government was detested, not because the Republican Party was dreaded, but because the dominance of an ignorant and inferior race was justly dreaded. And Mind you that in Germany they made an effort to educate young people on Germany's history and the Holocaust. But in America, the people who I've read quotes from who are Americans, they still have schools, libraries, hospitals, airports named after them. Credence and attention to anti-Semitism and racism in the US, and they're still praised and romanticized as these heroes of American politics, of heroes of America. They have schools, libraries, hospitals, airports named after them. They are memorialized on street corners, and these people, advocated for segregation, if not, extermination or the oppression of black people. So see if you can differentiate between the xenophobia of the Democrats and Republicans, because for a long time, Democrats wanted a wall. They thought that deporting people was the answer to immigration, and that America has the right to decide who comes in and out of our country, because they're sending drug lords, criminals, rapists, and people who are stealing jobs. Meanwhile, Brett Kavanaugh, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, they could do nothing about them. The quotes that I'm going to read, some of them are from Democrats and some of them are from Republicans, to prove the point that xenophobia is wholeheartedly embraced on both sides of the aisle. In the first place, we should insist that if the immigrant who comes here in good faith becomes a blank and assimilates himself to us, he shall be treated on an exact equality with everyone else. For it is an outrage to discriminate against any such man because of creed or birthplace or origin. But this is predicated upon the person's becoming in every facet a blank, and nothing but a blank. There can be no divided allegiance here. Any man who says he is a blank, but something else also, isn't a blank at all. We have no room for but one flag, the blank flag. We have no room for but one language, and that is the blank language. We have no room for but one sole loyalty, and that is a loyalty to the blank people. We need to secure our borders. I'm for it. I voted for it. I believe in it. And we also need to deal with the families, the workers who are here, who have made contributions, and their children. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crimes, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. After years of neglect, this administration has taken a strong stand to stiffen the protection of our borders. We are increasing border controls by 50%. We are increasing inspections to prevent the hiring of illegal immigrants. Well, look, I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier to try to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in. And I do think you have to control your borders. I also talk about building a wall, and oftentimes I say there's going to be a big, beautiful door, and that wall and the people are going to come into our country because we want people to come in. We want people to come into our country, but we want them to come in legally. America likes to create this other because the other is very easy to demonize. It's easier to treat people outside of your border as criminals instead of the people in your government as criminals. I bring up the point of immigration because, borders are used to control the flow of people and goods, and especially on stolen land, but no government has the right to control where people freely travel, especially in times of crisis. You know, when America intervenes in South America, we create a lot of the refugees who come from Venezuela, Nicaragua, Guatemala, That's where a lot of immigrants are coming from, not just Mexico. And the rhetoric that Democrats and Republicans use both create this other and support xenophobia. So to say that they're not bringing their best and brightest, or they're all drug smugglers and criminals and rapists who are trying to come into our country, that really, is racist, and B, it creates this notion that in America, we don't have sexual violence or drug lords, American drug lords, and it puts Americans on this pedestal that we don't deserve. Look at the number of rape cases that are never solved, or rape kits that are sitting on shelves in police departments, and the amount of sexual assault victims who never know what happens to their attacker. A lot of rapists are let to roam the streets free. It's never, we have to keep Brett Kavanaugh out of the Supreme Court, or we have to watch out for this senator, that governor who's a rapist or anti-Semitic. It's easier to treat the people outside of your borders as criminals than it is to call the people in your government criminals. There are plenty of rapists and racists and anti-Semites who hold positions of power and get to create policy in the United States. And I'm a lot more concerned about them than the people who are coming in through our borders. They're civilians. They're people like you and me, except for the fact that their countries have been manipulated. I would say that we have more rapists in positions of power in America than any other country in the world. Looking at, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Brett Kavanaugh, all of these men who hold positions of power and get to create policy love to point the finger at, poor brown and black people, saying that they're the criminals that we need to look out for. They're coming to get at you. They're sending these, dangerous rapists into America, and we need to ramp up our security, militarize the border, and build a wall to keep them out. There are plenty of rapists who never see their day in court, or, face consequences for their crimes against women and men as well. I guess if you're a white rapist, you're allowed in the country. If you're on a college campus, your dad's a lawyer, your parents have second homes, and you are in a certain tax bracket, you can get away with community service. But if you're trying to escape violence from your country and come into the U.S., who even has the entitlement to think that they have the right to decide who comes in and out of the country? They aren't giving money to corporations or, stealing money from the working class. That's the billionaires and the elite who are doing that. So again, it's just a diversion tactic to get people angry at the wrong group of people. Also, America being stolen land, the audacity of colonizers and white settlers to all of a sudden, have the authority to speak on who is and is not allowed into the country is just utterly ridiculous. And it's like a white superiority complex that they need to control and decide who is worthy of coming into the United States. So, yeah. I would be very impressed if Democrats could differentiate between the xenophobia from Trump and the xenophobia from the Clintons.